Hey there, and welcome to another episode of the Fluent English Conversations podcast. Every episode, I talk about something interesting, something different, something new, so you can improve your English vocabulary and practice your listening skills along the way. As always, remember there's a transcript you can download using the link in the description, and then you can make notes, you can highlight vocabulary, and all of that stuff so you can learn extra English along the way. Today, I wanted to talk to you about a study mindset, the way that you think about things when you are studying or when you're doing things in English to get the most out of the activities. Because for most of us, time is very limited. We don't have a huge amount of time available. So when you're studying, you really want to make sure that you're getting the most return on investment. So the time you're putting in is actually helping you to develop your English skills as well as having fun along the way. Most of us, when we're studying, have an idea of the areas we want to improve, whether that's vocabulary, pronunciation, grammar, structure, prepositions. It can literally be anything. Most people, when they are doing something in English, when they are reading or when they are listening, they try to do everything, everywhere, all at once, which doesn't really pay off in the long run because you never really focus on anything properly. So actually you don't really notice the detail of most areas. So the improvement you get is very general. Whereas actually I think it's much better to focus your attention, to really concentrate on one specific thing and really develop yourself in that area before moving on. The first thing I want to recommend with this particular mindset, this way of studying, is decide what you are going to do before you press play, before you start reading, before you open the book, before you even touch any of the English involved. Decide what you want to do. And what I mean by this is to actually understand what you are planning to achieve from that particular activity. Because not every activity that you do is going to give you the same return. You're not going to focus on things in the same way. You're not going to learn the same information. As an example, you can watch a TV series, a video, a film in lots of different ways and for lots of different reasons. You can watch it to learn new vocabulary. You can watch it to improve your listening comprehension, your accent, your pronunciation. You can use it in so many different ways to improve so many different areas of your English. And the problem is, if you don't decide before you get started, often you will find that you just don't really notice a huge amount of stuff. It's much better if you sit down and think, when I press play, what am I trying to achieve? And that will also help you answer other questions like, do I need subtitles? Do I want to make notes? Do I want to just sit back, relax, and enjoy the story? Because depending on what you're trying to achieve, you will need to understand whether you need to use subtitles, whether you should or you shouldn't do certain things, and that will also help you to study much more effectively. Let me give you an example. I've had a really long day, I'm really tired, maybe I've got a bit of a headache, it's like 10 o'clock at night, and I want to watch something in Italian, which is the language I'm studying, to just relax. So I'm not worried about learning vocabulary. I'm not worried about really improving my Italian at all. I just want to use Italian to relax, have fun, and enjoy a story in a new series. In that case, I don't make notes. I don't worry about really focusing on anything in particular. I would just watch it. And if I don't understand it without subtitles, I would just turn the subtitles on because I want to just relax and enjoy it. However, if I was specifically focusing on improving my vocabulary, learning sentence structure, prepositions, anything like that, I may actually consider using the subtitles from the beginning because it's actually easier to recognize the words and phrases when they are written, and that will allow me to make more detailed notes, to understand more what they're saying, and to really identify the key things that I want to learn. From another perspective, if I wanted to improve my listening comprehension, adding the subtitles from the beginning is actually going to be counterproductive because I won't be focusing on listening, I will be reading. So in that context, I would make sure I have subtitles available because then I can check that I understand after I've done the listening technique. But I would start without the subtitle and focus on trying to understand it just from listening. And if you want a listening technique, make sure you check out my video where I shared one of my favorite listening techniques that will really help you improve your listening comprehension. And this whole concept, I think, is something that a lot of students don't really think about. They don't think about why they do a particular activity. They're just told, you need to read more, you need to watch more, you need to listen to podcasts. But why? What's the point? If you are just reading for the sake of reading, and you're also feeling frustrated that you're not making progress with your English, something isn't quite clicking, something's not quite working. Because if you are reading a lot and watching a lot of TV, you should be noticing progress. You should be feeling like you're better in certain areas and that you are making loads of progress. But if you're not, that probably means that when you are doing things in English, you're not really focusing your attention in the right areas to actually get those results. And alongside this idea, there's also the concept of transference. And the whole idea of this is that the skill that you want to learn should be practiced in the closest way possible, because then it's easier to transfer that learned skill into the real situation. So if you are preparing for an interview and you're preparing to answer questions, the best way to practice that is to actually answer questions by speaking out loud and responding to questions. The least effective way is sitting and just writing examples and never opening your mouth, keeping your mouth shut. Because then when you go into the interview setting, if you've only written things down and you haven't practiced actually saying them and responding in real time to questions, that's something that you're going to have to try and apply and adjust, and then it's much more difficult to put those skills into that context. In the same way that if you wanted to learn how to drive a car, you wouldn't just read the manual and expect to understand exactly how to drive and get in the car and immediately be a Formula One racer. It just doesn't happen that way. You need practical experience driving to learn the practical skills. In the same way, if you want to improve your emails, you want to write better, more complex, more detailed emails, talking to someone is maybe not actually going to improve your writing as much as actually writing emails. And it sounds really logical, but you'd be surprised how many times people tell me that they want to improve their listening skills, but then they only ever watch TV with subtitles. Or they want to improve their vocabulary, but they never make any notes of particular words or phrases. And you don't always have to make notes. I use that as an example. But if you're not making notes or you're not recording them anywhere, the chances are that you're not actually concentrating on them enough to really take them in. And that's why your vocabulary is not improving. Obviously, if you're not watching or reading anything, then that kind of answers the question that you're not actually doing anything in English, and that's really the first problem. But if you are watching videos like this one, if you're reading books, if you're reading articles, you are already getting the input, but you're not using the input in the way that's going to generate the skills and the knowledge that you need. And this all comes down to good goal setting. You need to understand your goals, but in a more subtle way, even if your goal is to reach the C1 level, you need to decide on the day, in the moment, what am I actually going to do? If you have half an hour, maybe you want to choose an activity that's only going to take half an hour and is going to be a little bit more relaxed. If you've got 3 or 4 hours and you really want to go intensely into the subject and dive deep, then maybe you would choose a different set of techniques, a different set of resources, and you would apply yourself in a different way. When I sit down, I would often ask myself those questions of, why am I practicing? What am I trying to achieve? And what is the best way to actually achieve those goals? And that will then determine what you read or listen to, the way you do it, if you use subtitles, if you take notes, if you translate, if you don't, all of those different questions that you would normally ask a teacher, which I get asked every single day. Is it okay if I use subtitles? Should I stop translating and only use a monolingual dictionary? Stuff like that. A lot of the time you can answer those questions yourself, depending on what you're actually trying to achieve when you are doing that particular activity. And alongside this general mindset of deciding what you're going to do when you study, there's a much bigger concept which I like to call investigation study. And this is where, separate from my main language goals, I like to choose one particular aspect of the language I'm learning and focus on improving and developing and noticing that thing. And the reason I use notice is because a lot of the time I speak to people who read and they watch and they listen to English content every single day, but they still have problems with things that they completely understand when they are listening or reading, which means that they are not noticing the patterns and the structures and the ideas because they're focusing on other areas. In the same way, if you never really think about the pronunciation of words and you only think about the meaning, you're not really going to improve your pronunciation. It's kind of obvious, really. This concept of investigation study is the way I would describe it, where I pick one particular aspect, then I will always try to focus on that in every activity that I do. Let me give you some examples from my own language learning. I am an upper intermediate student in Spanish, and when I am studying Spanish, the thing that I am investigating, the thing I'm really concentrating on at the moment, is verbs. Verbs are the things which I really want to improve. I want to make sure that I understand the verbs and I want to recognize the tenses. I'm not fussed about being able to actually generate them myself. I want to just be able to recognize the conjugations first, take them in, so then when I get a chance to actually speak, because at the moment I don't really get much opportunity to speak in Spanish, when I actually get the opportunity, I will be able to actually remember and apply those later. So for now, I'm focusing on understanding and recognizing. Whereas in Italian, I'm at the B2C1 upper intermediate advanced level, and I'm really focusing on sentence structure. I want my phrases to sound more Italian in terms of the order of the words, how I connect the words and sentences together, and the way that I structure my expressions rather than them being a direct translation of what I would normally say in English. So when I'm doing those two different languages, the things I focus on and how I study, it's very, very different. But I have a clear idea of, at the moment, I'm focusing on this. And then either when I feel like I've reached a decent level and I'm not getting much progress and I'm not really getting anything out of doing that thing again, then I will just choose a different subject. Or if I get bored. I'm not the sort of student who will create a deck of 10,000 flashcards and I'll study them every day just because I know it's super effective. I get really bored and then I just stop. So for me, it's all about having fun. And if I'm doing this type of study and it's really boring, I'm getting bored of looking at articles or prepositions or verbs, I'll just choose something different because there's always something else you can improve. There's always something else you can learn to keep it fresh. And doing it this way will really help you feel like you're making progress because you will be able to notice that you are doing certain things better. Especially for intermediate students, the thing they always tell me is that they never feel like they're making progress, they feel like they're working really hard and that they stay in the same place. If you concentrate on articles, for example, when you're doing this and you're focusing on it every day, you're making notes, you're thinking about how they work, that means you will be able to clearly say, I can use articles better now than I could last week or last month or whenever. And that, just one thing, tells you you're making progress, which you can then apply to all areas of your English. And you can understand that I might not be able to quantify how much I'm improving, but I know I'm improving. And that's a really positive thing, and it will really help you to keep going when it feels really difficult or really tough. And this particular method focuses around choosing the subject that you're going to concentrate on, as we've discussed, and then asking yourself two questions. Why? And what would I do? Why is because you want to be able to check that you understand the logic, the reason, or the purpose for that particular phrase, expression, or structure. It's not just enough to be able to understand what it means. You need to understand why they do a certain thing. Why is it the instead of a? Why is it of instead of to? For example, all of those things. You might look at it and go, yeah, well, obviously it's to. But why is it to? That's the real question. Can you actually answer from a technical perspective the purpose of that word? Why it's used rather than another word, why that expression is structured in a particular way compared to another structure. And it's not so easy to do that. And doing this will bring up questions which you can then research, speak to a teacher, and questions and answering questions is another really good way of noticing progress. If you notice here, all of this is about trying to feel like you're making progress, finding questions and really pushing you forward step by step. The second question, what would I do, is looking at a particular expression with whichever thing I'm going to focus on and then asking myself, if I were to say that phrase, what would I normally say? If it's exactly the same, perfect, brilliant, move on. If it's not, that gives me more questions. Am I right? Am I wrong? What's the difference? Is there a difference? And again, that would force me to do research, speak to a teacher, speak to my friends. Finding these problems, these dilemmas, is what's going to mean that you constantly move forward. If you can answer both of these questions clearly and accurately, so you can answer why it is a particular way and you would say it in the same way, then you just move on to the next expression. If all the expressions you're finding with the particular concept you're focusing on, if you find all of those and you answer both of those questions perfectly, then it's probably time to choose a different subject because you've reached a level where you're not actually getting much progress or much benefit from it. So if I was looking at verbs and I was reading a book and I read 2 or 3 chapters and every single verb I recognized and I knew the meaning and I could clearly identify the conjugation and the tense of that particular verb, then it's probably time for me to focus on something else because actually I'm just basically patting myself on the back going, great job, Sam, you're doing fantastic, but I'm not really learning anything new. But if you're constantly asking yourself questions and you can't answer them, you always have dilemmas, you always have things you want to ask your teacher, that means that you're still getting benefit out of it and you can just carry on. But like I said before, if you get bored, just pick something else. Getting bored while you're studying is one of the quickest and easiest ways to give up. And if you give up, you're not going to make any progress. So that just doesn't make sense to me either. To sum things up, to put it all in a nutshell for you, it's really important that you focus on what you're going to study in general whenever you do something in English, focusing on that area in all contexts so that you notice what's being shown to you. You're noticing the input as it comes in, you're processing it, you're absorbing it, and then you can use it yourself. It's also important to identify what you want to improve when you start to do something in English, which skill or ability or knowledge, so you can identify the best technique or method or process to achieve that particular goal. So if you're just sitting back, relaxing, watching Netflix, who cares if you have subtitles? Like honestly, who actually cares? Because you're still going to learn new phrases if you see them written, but because everyone says, subtitles bad, don't read subtitles, everyone thinks they shouldn't use them at all. And actually in some contexts they can be really helpful and help you improve your English much more, or they can just help you enjoy a new TV series, and sometimes that's enough. Don't beat yourself up if you don't feel like you're doing something in exactly the right way. Just ask yourself, am I getting out of this activity what I wanted to get out of it? If you answer yes, you're doing exactly the right thing for you, and that's the whole point. It's perfect for you. Not for me, not for John, not for Barry, not for whoever it is, for Tom, Dick and Harry. It's about what's right for you, so you have fun, you feel like and you know you're making progress, and you understand what you're supposed to be doing based on your goals and your plans and what you want to improve. But I think it's really important to remember these kind of mindset things, because that's what's going to set you apart from somebody who just takes a textbook and studies from Unit 1 to Unit 100, or somebody who really has a passion for learning English and can use that passion to develop their skills in the ways that's going to help them to communicate and reach the next level. I would love for you to tell me what activities that you have been doing in English recently and what your goal was. Were you watching Netflix just to have fun? Were you reading articles to learn vocabulary? Let me know what you were focusing on and how you did it, and then I can also help you with some additional techniques and tips. So in the comments section, anyone who's brave enough to put their thoughts in there, I'll be giving you loads of help and advice of different ways I would approach it so you can improve your language learning strategies and your language learning action plan. But in the meantime, have a fantastic week, have a great day learning English, and I look forward to speaking to you very soon.